All right, item number 7, initial operating segment.
So, Mr. Chairman, Hans van Winkel is going to present this initial operating segment. This is nothing all that new, but we wanted to make sure that we have clarity with everybody how we intend to move from an initial construction segment further into the areas, the populated areas of the state. So Hans van Winkel is going to do the presentation.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, members. As our CEO mentioned, I'm going to give you a quick overview, and this is really a preamble to the business plan. What I'll walk you through is a little bit of our thinking of how we're going to proceed. I've talked earlier about the initial constructed section, and we'll sort of talk you through how this will move from an initial construction section through an initial operating section, and then into some of the final stages of the project, both Phase 1 and Phase 2. Now, as a preamble, this does not have all the data that our business plan will have. This is really more of a geographical and a conceptual discussion for you. We are, as I mentioned earlier, we're in the process of updating the ridership numbers, which will be published in part of this. Our cost data and our cost analysis, both in terms of capital costs and our operating costs, will also be updated. And, of course, from that, having the ridership and the costs, we'll be able to present our anticipated revenue situations for each one of the initial operating sections. So all that is to come. What we did want to do at this meeting, though, is just to sort of show you geographically what our thinking is, and again allow you and members of the public to input as to other perhaps formulations of initial operating section. So the first slide that we have is really a recapitulation of that. As I mentioned, we will start off with this initial construction. We've talked about that in terms of the packages. That will consist largely of the civil infrastructure. So that is the initial constructed section. From that, we will come back to you at some point when we have sufficient revenues and recommend to you an initial operating section. And by that we mean what we say, operating. And at that point we would have systems, we'd have additional civil construction. And now we would bring in our systems and bring in our terrain and come with an operating section. Once we have that, then of course we will be able to move from the initial operating section and be able to expand into a full Phase 1 operation. You see that on the slides as well. And then, as you know, that ultimately we'll put in the entire system of a Phase 2. So that's just a recap of the process. I'll go into a little bit more detail on each one of those sections. Next slide, please. So there you see some of the general outlines of the populations. For example, we know that ultimately we want to link the north with the south, and then I think, as we've mentioned many times before, there is a substantial population in the Central Valley section. You can see there then as linking those great population centers of the state of California. As we've also described to this point, our top priority in the EIR process is to get the first 2 sections done, and you've heard from Dan and his consultants that how that is going. We're moving rapidly to get those items done, and with some of the changes that you saw today. And once we finish that EIR section, of course, and then we would move into the next section, would be that San Jose Merced that we just also discussed with you, and then continue on until all of the EIRs are completed. Once we have that, then of course we have the freedom then to move in whichever direction we choose to do so. Next slide, please. So once we have that initial section, and then here in this slide it's listed in blue, at that point our intent would be to, when we receive our next sums of money from either, from whatever source, presumably the federal matched by state money, then we would extend the ICS, and we're calling it as an extended ICS. I think Mr. VanArk mentioned this as the backbone of the system then. That becomes, in essence, a future test track. Now that's very important because to this date, nobody in the United States certainly has a facility adequate to test this new high-speed train. There are existing high-speed systems internationally, but none here in the United States, and certainly no test track. There is a test track in Colorado, but doesn't have adequate means for us to do the track. So then we would extend, as you see here in blue now, we would have a backbone for the first true high-speed system in the United States. We would have 4 potential stations at that point, and we have a good section of 170 miles to which to test out our systems. Again, we're not calling this an iOS, we're calling it an extended ICS, because in all likelihood we don't think that the revenue projections with the associated costs would make a viable system. So then we have, from that point, we really have 3 options. One would be to the north, and then two would be to the south in terms of eventually coming to you with a recommendation. Under this first option I'm going to present to you, the San Jose Bakersfield, you see some of the data there linking up the Central Valley with the peninsula. You also see we've designated on the slide some of our linkages to regional transport, and that would be very important. You see Caltrain, Amtrak, and the other associated regional trains. We're mindful of that linkage to, again, provide a passenger experience. At this point now, we've achieved 6 stations, 6 potential stations. And again, as the slide designates, this is an operating section, so we would have ridership in those sections. About 250 miles from San Jose to Bakersfield, about a little over an hour and a half, a little short of 2 hours. And again, provide service now connecting up the Bay Area, the Peninsula area with the Central Valley. So that really is the first potential. Now, again, we could go, instead of going north, we could go south. And under this particular option, we look at the option of moving from Merced to Palmdale. And here, 5 stations, you see them. Extending south then gives us a good stretch here, 250 miles. Again, about an hour 45. And in this case, we've crossed the Tehachapi Mountains, some of our challenges moving through there. So again, this gets us close to the LA Basin, but of course we're not there yet. But we do have linkage with the regional transportation system on that option. Next slide, please. And here you see our third option, and this, of course, takes more time and more resources to extend beyond the Palmdale and move into the San Fernando Valley. In this case, we have over 300 miles of track operating. We have the 6 stations that you've seen on your slide. A little over 2 hours, Merced into the Los Angeles Basin. And, of course, in this case, we have to cross 2 mountains, and certainly you'll find that the cost associated with that will be increased. But we have achieved something very important now, and we have good interconnectivity with the entire population in the LA Basin and the Central Valley, and, of course, with the regional transportation systems. Next slide, please. Then, of course, we can connect all the way into Sacramento. And, of course, with other systems, that does give you rail into the peninsula area. So those really are the 3 options that we're looking at. Again, this is a preamble. I think you'll be much more interested when we come to you with the business plan and we start putting the data in terms of ridership costs and associated revenues. But we did want to present this as our way of thinking. We did want to present that so that if you have thoughts or other ideas that we could continue to do that analysis. And so based on that, then that completes my presentation.
Thank you,
I'm sorry, I did miss one slide, excuse me. We did want to present the concept of the Bay to Basin approach, and that will also be in our business plan. And that is that we want to achieve, before we achieve a phase 1, we talked about iOS from an iOS situation into a phase 1. There really is an intermediate stage depending on how we do that, and we call that a bay-to-basin approach. And that really says you select both options, going north and south, to give you that final linkage. And so that really is sort of the prelude to having that full phase 1. So you'll also see that in the business plan, an option to move to a bay-to-basin as a preamble to the full phase 1. So that does complete my presentation. And Mr. Chairman, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, General. Commissioner Pringle.
Yes, I have a couple. First off, initially you said that you had 3 options, so I would assume that option number 2 was Merced to Palmdale on slide number 5, or 9. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. There are one north and 2 south.
Got it. So in that context, I would just suggest, and so I can be really picky. Slide 9 as a standalone, isn't that, in fact, when you talk about the connectivity in slide 11, where you get all the way to the San Fernando Valley, isn't slide 9 the same? Isn't it a connection into ACE and Amtrak and the San Joaquin Corridor and the regional San Joaquin Regional Rail and Metrolink? Aren't all of those interconnectivities suggested that you have on slide 11 also made at slide 9?
Yes, essentially, except that under slide 9, then you would transfer from our train in Palmdale. Under slide 11, you wouldn't transfer until you hit the San Fernando Valley, so that would substantially cut the cost of moving from, say, Merced into the LA Basin, because you'd be on a high-speed train for that short section. Right now,
No, that doesn't make any sense.
I think the answer is correct to what Member Pringle's
3
requesting.
minutes remaining. This conference is showing no activity.
All right,
if
we
you would
better
like
wrap
to
this
continue
up.
the conference, please press *1 now.
yes, but if your question is interconnectivity with railroad, that is in fact correct.
It's a standalone option. You're quite
Yeah,
right.
right.
And
Right.
it just didn't have the logos on showing the interconnectivity to the other. And you are right. Yeah.
Yes, it is the same system.
It is.
Well, I just want to make sure as we look at this slide that to achieve the same level of connectivity. I mean, because at the end of the day, I thought the whole discussion of going from an initial construction segment is to get to an initial operating segment.
That's
the definition of initial operating segment would be what is the least amount of money to be able to connect into a population center where that operation will pay for itself. I mean, is that what we're defining as an initial operating segment?
Yes.
Therefore, I just don't want to kind of leave hanging an option that does get us to Palmdale, or let's more clearly define that, get into northern LA County. And a northern LA County connection does provide some of the same connectivity into the Metrolink system, is what I'm trying to say, than going all the way down to the San Fernando Valley, because some initial estimates that I had seen is going from Bakersfield to Palmdale is X, but going Bakersfield to Palmdale, San Gabriel Valley is 2X, almost twice as much money or even more to get that far down into the LA Basin. So I don't want that to be defined as the only way to connect south to be able to have the same level of connectivity.
Very clearly, Mr. Pringle, that is one of the options. It's actually called an iOS option. You can see it at the top of the page. The only difference is it didn't have the badges or the logos of the different interconnectivities.
Yes, that's
but it is a standalone. It is a standalone possibility for an iOS.
Therefore, this very last slide, and I'm sorry I'm fidgety here because I've got a dresser between my legs and I don't have a desk here, so I'm up against the shelves. So I'm just trying to maneuver close enough. But the on the slide where you did talk to the bay to basin concept, that is an extended initial operating segment. That's not an initial operating segment, right?
Again, in the sense of it operating, by I mean we run a high-speed service as our definition.
Well, of course, but I mean an initial operating segment would be the initial segment in which we can operate a high-speed train, right? I mean, I don't want to just blend over all these definitions, because we've got to the initial construction segment, and that's where we're spending money, but we understand we cannot operate independent high-speed service within the initial construction segment and make enough money to pay for the operation. So our next determination is trying to figure out where that initial operating segment will be, where we can operate using that construction segment and beyond to be able to pay for the cost of operation. And of course, if you get to that point, let's say it's San Jose to Bakersfield. Let's say it's Merced to Palmdale. Whichever one of those it is, the point of the matter is, of course, we're going to grow it. Right? We're going to grow it south, and we're going to grow it north. Of course we are. So I guess I just don't want to blend the words of saying an initial operating segment. Somehow we're not going to be able to be operating a high-speed train until we get to San Jose and the LA Basin. That I hope we're not
Again, Mr. Pringle, you are correct. The final bay-to-basin is an extension of one or the other of the iOSs.
Very good.
So you're quite right.
All right, thanks.
Other questions? Mr. Toledo.
Thank you. I just have one question, and that is the reference of the business plan. Give us some guidance, if you would, Mr. VanArk or one of your colleagues, on the timing of when we're going to be presented the plan.
I made mention of this at the last board meeting. We believe that in September we will be at the board with the document. But we will, before September, be coming to the board with some more aspects of, what is within the business plan. But clearly, we are on track to be able to meet the date of not later than 14th of October.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, General. Appreciate it.